Okay. Welcome back to another episode of A Dose of Reality. How are we feeling today, Amakhu?
Yeah, we're feeling good. I'm feeling good. You feeling good?
I'm feeling good.
Then we're feeling good.
It's a little bit of a late shoot, so I'm trying to get energy up.
It is indeed. The sun has gone down. Well, is the sun ever here in London?
Not really.
Yeah, but it's gone down. It's gone down. So yeah, but we're ready to go. Let's do this.
Let's get into this. Well, actually, before we get into the topic, I need to follow up on something because I made promises on Michael.
What promises did you make? What promises did you make?
Well, we had some extra footage left over from episode 18. That must be Is Africa on the Rise? So I was like, I'm going to put that out. It was about a week ago. I was like, I told people I'm going to put that out throughout the week.
Yeah.
And, some things happened. Well, what had happened was...
Liar.
We was outside of London, innit?
Right.
And, we ended up there longer than expected for some crazy happenings.
Yes, indeed.
And that kind of threw off our whole week. So we didn't get to put out that footage. But it's still coming. I mean, we just then had to shift on working on Philadelphia. We got that out by the skin of our teeth. We got out, yeah.
We did indeed.
People don't even be knowing. It's crazy sometimes.
Yeah. It ain't no easy thing putting the episode together. But what I'm getting from this is you're a liar who lies. You lied to the people. You lied to them.
We're supposed to look unified on this podcast. And you're just really going to turn on me like this, like it was my fault.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
My bad.
Because you made promises too, because we're a unit.
Oh, okay. But I wasn't there when the promises were made. I didn't know. I wasn't aware. But all right, unified, unity. All right, yeah. We're gonna make it up to them.
But you know what I'm thinking actually? Because stuff has happened in terms of Africa since we shot that footage. So maybe we should just do Is Africa on the Rise Part 2?
Yeah.
Because there's enough happening to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot happening over in the continent. So yeah, we need to keep people apprised. So I'll be all for that. We can do part 2.
Let's just do that.
We can do that. That's all good with me.
Yeah. So that's settled. So be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for that.
More promises, yeah? No. We're going to make it happen.
We're going to make it happen. I didn't even say I promise, so.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
We just bouncing ideas right now.
Oh, okay.
That's what we're doing. We're bouncing ideas. But today, let's get into today's topic. We're going to talk about creation. That's one I know you like talking about.
It's one of my favorite topics. Back in class is my favorite topic to speak about.
You was our existence/creation guy.
Yeah. Okay. Put me in a box, but yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'll take it. I'll take the box. I very much enjoy looking into creation, the aspects of creation, so on and so forth. It's very intriguing. So yeah, for sure.
So probably we could just open with how the universe came to be. And we actually got some people to send us in some questions surrounding creation. So then after that, we can get into that. So it could be sort of a Q&A-ish episode.
Yeah.
Once we discuss our topic.
We can do that. No doubt.
So how did the universe come to be?
I mean, as I think we've put out as well before, and we've spoken a little bit on this before, but always the book to go to for this is Existence, How and Why.
Obviously, absolutely.
Which really just breaks it down in terms of how, certainly when you're dealing with physical creation, what really was going on, and gives us a little bit of an idea of the science that took place. Because often the question was asked, well, was it a Big Bang, or was it this mysterious biblical God that snapped his fingers, so on and so forth? And really, when you're talking about Big Bang, Baba Yaanuwn explained that in essence, it was a Big Bang, so to speak, but or a clash of particles that caused this creation. But it would be wrong to think that this clash was accidental or just random or it just happened and, there's no real consciousness behind it. It would be incorrect to think that. And because we think of consciousness as that which we are, we sometimes struggle to perceive that there may be consciousnesses or consciousness that is different and more advanced than what we are in this current state of existence. So when you're dealing with creation or physical creation, in that book, it will explain that really you have etherical particles. So on this side of existence, where you have atomic energy or atomic elements, on the other side of existence, you have etherical energy or etherical elements, so to speak, if you need an equivalent in order to match, if that makes sense. So what you had was etherical particles, both positive and negative, sort of floating around during what would have been the winter period of existence, so to speak, if we say it as it applies to this universe. These etherical particles floating around, and at some point, as nature willed it so, it would have been time, it would have been a summer period of existence, the same way we see on this planet. We see things come to life in the summer. It would have been a summer period of existence, and these etherical particles would have aggregated towards each other, come together into that point of singularity to create what some might call the Big Bang. And from that point of singularity, which is really that black dot, all else, or all we know in this physical universe would have sprang forth, so to speak. So essentially what we're saying is the creation of the universe started in darkness, or before we had that spark of light, this universe was in darkness. Okay? And these etherical particles, when I speak about etherical particles, one thing I want to make clear is you have different levels of ether. Okay? 9 ether, or what Baba Yaanuwn calls 9 ether, is a composition of all the gases and chemicals that comprise this universe. The important thing to note about these gases is they're conscious gases. Okay, when we think gas, we think of gas, right? They're conscious gases. That which comes before this physical creation is conscious, makes decisions. There's an intelligence to nature, so to speak. So it existed in darkness, and it comes to that point of singularity, which we call Pa Khamem Nakat, which translates to the black dot of existence. So that first point of physical existence, so to speak, or that point between energy and matter, or between physical existence and that which came before it, which you could define as etherical or spiritual existence, is that black dot. And that black dot acts as a vortex in a way, because it brings forth that which is energy into matter, or it brings forth that which is on the other side of existence, ether, into atomic elements. Okay, so those etherical particles come together to create that black dot of existence, and from that black dot, the creation of this universe begins. And it's not like that. We're talking about growth. One thing to note about creation that I want to say off the bat, when you look into the word creation, etymology wise, it means growth. It means to grow. So creation isn't a thing that happens, more it is a thing that is continuously happening. Okay, you are always growing or transforming in some way. That process never really stops.
Yeah, we see that throughout nature.
Yeah.
Nothing is instantaneous.
It grows.
You don't instantly have a baby.
Yeah,
it grows.
Yeah, you got to do a couple things. There's got to be a big bang, so to speak.
And then a small bang.
yeah, a small bang. It depends.
Depends.
Really depends what you're doing. But there is that clash of negative and positive, or opposing particles or opposing energies. And from that clash, something begins its growth period, so to speak. But it's a transformation. Key line we always speak about: energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So it's a transformation. So that which exists now didn't come out of nothing. So in the way that certainly we think of nothing in this modern day. If you think of nothing as a thing that cannot be weighed on this physical side, then yes, it came out of nothing. So Baba Yaanuwn in Existence How and Why, and in another book called Pa Gutut, which translates to the Stargate, he explains that, just because a thing cannot be weighed doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So what we would perceive in this physical realm as nothing is just that which we can't weigh on this side of existence, but it still exists. Okay, similarly to the way that your shadow still exists, okay, as a representation of you, even though you can't weigh it. And so that's,
can't pick it up. It's not something tangible.
Can't grab that shadow. Okay. And so it's exactly that. And so physical existence came forth by way of that, by way of etherical energy, if that makes sense. And that is but that process is ever going, because existence itself has no beginning or end. So we're just constantly seeing transformations of energy that is changing forms, whether it's slowing down its vibration to be a physical, or whether it's speeding up its vibration to be that which is beyond the physical, spiritual, so on and so forth, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you would start it off there. We would say, okay, from the etherical side of existence came forth physical creation. In Existence How and Why, Baba Yaanuwn breaks down that process step by step. Okay, so he explains that the first thing that happened is that black dot, that point of singularity, is essentially a universal egg, which will eventually grow to become what we would know as a sun or a star. Okay, that universal egg or that point of singularity, one of the first things it does is it sends out etherical electrical waves. Okay, and on the end of each of these waves, another universal egg forms. Okay, so that's the first thing that Baba Yaanuwn explains. It says the first thing, this universal egg, which will grow into a sun at some point, or could be considered a sun even at this point. It's the same thing again, growth, transformation. What it will become is what it is, essentially. And so the first thing it does is it sends out these electrical waves, and at the end of each wave, another universal egg is born, which would then send out its own electrical waves, and so on and so forth. So you can begin to imagine even at this point how infinite existence is, really, you know. So it will send out these electrical waves, and another universal egg will form on the end. So if we take one of these universal eggs, for example, one of the next things that it will do is it will begin that creation of the elements, so to speak. So that first element is hydrogen, right? Becoming helium, on so on, lithium, beryllium, boron, so on and so forth. Okay, so that conversion of energy begins. The atoms start to create. These atoms, remember, if you study atomic science, you understand atoms fuse and become the next atom up, or begin to become heavier atoms, so to speak. So hydrogen fusing with itself, becoming helium, so on and so forth. So you have a conversion of atomic energy, okay? What Baba Yaanuwn explains is that this conversion begins, and you have 554 million tons of hydrogen converting into 550 million tons of helium, right? And that conversions, those clashes, that fusing, so to speak, continues until you birth your first 9 elements, okay? Your 10th element, if we look at the periodic table, is known as neon, okay? It was named as such because if you study the etymology of the word neon or neo, it's something new, something different, something special, because they knew that something new, not to keep using these words, was beginning, right? So remember, you had 554 tons, and I'm speeding through a little bit the creation story. Like I said in the segment we released, read the book, okay? 554 million tons converting into 550 million tons of atomic energy. That means there's 4 million tons left over. This 4 million tons of energy is what is going to become your neon, okay? Neon, if you study a little bit about neon, creates reactions within the sun. You know them as dark spots or sunspots, electrical storms upon the sun's surface. What happens is these electronic storms become powerful enough that they eventually start propelling, they start exploding, so to speak, propelling pieces of this sun out into the surrounding atmosphere. Eventually, what is propelled outwards will cool a little bit, and it will become a mixture, of solids, liquids, and gases. Okay, that's what is going to account for everything else that you see in the universe: planets, comets, meteorites, any form of satellites, so on and so forth. Everything comes from that universal egg, or what we know as that sun or that star. But note that every sun is not to become the center of a universe, or the center of a galaxy, or the center of a solar system. It depends on its size. Some stars or suns will just be for stabilization or light or so on and so forth. But those that will become houses of their own solar system will send out these electronic storms propelled out into the atmosphere. And
so is it like, in a sense, they're giving birth to their children?
So they're giving birth to their children. They're giving birth to their sons, so to speak, if that makes sense. And that will become everything else you know to be in this universe or in this galaxy. When we taught it in class, we always narrowed it down to this solar system just for simplicity. So you can imagine, if you talk about this solar system, our sun would have propelled pieces of itself out into the surrounding atmosphere. Those pieces would have cooled down and become a mixture of solids, liquids, and gases, and then eventually start to become, based on time and growth, their own orbs, okay, whether it's planets, so on and so forth. So with this planet, it would have been propelled outwards. Nature would have decided, okay, this particular piece of mass or piece of matter is going to become its own planet. Earth, Gabab, Ptah, Nun, Tiamat, whatever tone you use, that's been used by different cultures throughout time. That was what was to happen. So propelled out from the sun, cools down, starts to draw other smaller pieces of matter towards it. It's like, you're not going to become anything. You're not going to become anything. Just come and be a part of this planet here. And Earth is grown. Okay. What happens is that at this point, the sun is really holding Earth or other planets in position. Eventually what it's going to do is it's going to let go of it and allow the Earth to displace its own weight within the atmosphere, if that makes sense. So whenever you drop a ball into water and you see that water part slightly depending on the weight of the ball, the sun gives the Earth permission, so to speak, to decide its distance based on its weight. Okay, so then it will go further out into the atmosphere before it settles in its position based on its weight at that particular point in time, if you like, and then begins its eternal rotation around the sun, held in place by that which birthed it, if that makes sense. So at that point, because you read the story or read the account of reality in existence, how and why, the sun will ignite the planet and the Earth will be burning, so to speak. So early Earth is burning. We did a good animation actually of this, illustrating this. I don't know if we still have it.
Somewhere, definitely. So we have to see if we can locate it.
Pull that up. I ain't going to promise them, because you've been making promises. I ain't going to promise them that we'll have it on this particular episode. But if we find it, we'll put it up.
Are you talking about the one that I did? That animation?
Look who's just arrived.
Look who's just popped into the studio.
Where'd that voice come from?
Who's that?
Where he is. Yes, Ray is here.
Ray Benusaken Atum. What's that?
That's my name.
Yeah, he may have made the animation. Maybe that happened.
Yeah, maybe he animates.
Yeah, he sounded like he's a little bitter there behind him, talking about the one I made. Like we put him to work against his will or something.
That is not what I sound like. Okay, I was very grateful for the work.
Yeah, that's what he sounded like to me. Yes, Ray Benu, Sekenatun. Quick plug, 9 Sticks. They're animators. Ray Benu.
They're so good.
Shamu.
9 Sticks.
They do their thing.
Check them
YouTube,
out.
TikTok.
Yeah.
Okay, he just looked like he popped in to promote himself.
It's his own plug.
That's the only reason I'm here. I'm going to leave now.
That's why he said nothing. Up until that point, he wasn't interested. Talking about creation is like, mentioned animation. It's like, okay, there's a chance for me to say what I do. It's disrespectful. That's what
Shameless plug.
No, I'm listening to the knowledge. I'm remembering you break this down before.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So, moving on from that plug. Yes, Ray Ben had done the animation. If we find it, we can put it up now. But essentially what you have is the planet burning, and that burning will burn and burn and burn until the burning goes beneath the surface of the orb and towards the center of the orb, accounting for your central sun. Okay, so read existence, how and why. If you're in the older school, you'll if you were in the older school, you remember books like Shambhala and Agartha, so on and so forth, where Baba Yaanuwn explained that there is a central sun in the center of this orb that we call Earth. When Earth was first created, it's that burning which created the central sun, and eventually that burning went beneath the surface and towards the center of the orb, if that makes sense, which is what accounts for the cities, caves, and caverns beneath the surface of this planet. No, life does not just exist on the surface. There is also life and space for life beneath the surface.
Watch our segment on Hollow Earth.
It's out there. Pop it up in the...
Yeah, it's gonna pop up.
It's gonna pop up in the screen.
This is what we do. Leave this to the editors and social media managers.
All right, bit condescending, but yeah.
Is it gonna pop up?
Wow. Okay, so that burning will go beneath the surface, and what you will have is at that point is the sun will shift the water that's present on the herb, and it will begin to rain and rain and rain and rain, and eventually that rain will find its way beneath the surface towards that central sun. Okay, when that rain or when that water meets the chemicals that are in the center of this orb, it creates a chemical reaction or several chemical reactions. Okay, for lack of a better term, explosions, if you like, which send again pieces of the earth flying up. Some will be powerful enough that pieces of the earth will actually fly up and away from the orb, becoming separate celestial bodies, if you like, maybe satellites, so on and so forth.
So out the atmosphere of the orb. Some will propel upwards from the center of the planet and land back at a different point, or just propel upwards where the earth is moved upwards but not separated. Those two will account for your hills, your mountains, your high places, so on and so forth. But what the chemical reaction is doing is it's creating those gaps within the earth for your caves, for your caverns, for your waterfalls, or what will eventually become your waterfalls, if that makes sense. For your
beings to come and say, you know what, I might not want to live on the surface of this planet, but look at these gaps, look at these caves, I can build a whole city here. Shambhala and Agartha. Okay? Maybe we'll pop up, if you read that, if you watch that segment on Hollow Earth, I'm sure we spoke about Admiral Byrd and so on and so forth. There are a few different accounts of people finding these entrances to these caves or these caverns or to these cities beneath the surface. Okay? So you can look into that if you want. So this all happened by nature. These gaps were created by nature. And at that point, remember the earth would have been very, very hot at this point. At that point, or as time passed, it would have become ready for life. So you would have had life that could be present both on the surface of the planet, in the waters, or in the caves, or in the caverns, so to speak. And so Earth was ready. And beings from Orion, as we teach in our culture, beings from Sarhat or Sabatat, which translates to Orion star constellation or Sirius star constellation, would have, okay, now it's time. Let's go there and let's seed our children. Okay? And we would have been the first that was seeded upon the planet. So I'll stop there. Yeah. Because we got like that's physical creation. Then we get into the creation of that which is on the planet, which is a whole nother
episode.
Right. But hopefully that was a decent summary of creation. And as we teach in our culture is very scientific, but we understand that science may go beyond that which can be explained by Westerners. So the term science has incorrectly been associated with Westerners' ways of explaining things, if that makes sense. And as soon as you step outside of that, now it's no longer science, just because Westerners haven't done their experiments and come up with their theories and come up with their papers and so on and so forth. No, spiritual science and that which is scientific came long before the Westerners that we know today. And ancient cultures understood and overstood how the universe worked and how it all came to be. So do not submit to their way of explaining things and assume that if it's not done by them, then it's not really real yet, until they come out with their paper and say in their way, oh yeah, maybe the universe did start like this. No. We've got to remember to trust our stories and our ancestors, so on and so forth. So yeah, hopefully that's a little summary of how this universe came to be.
We've got to remember our ancestors were scientists also.
They were indeed.
We've got to remember that. But yeah, that was a good telling.
I hope so.
Of creation.
I hope so. It's late at night, so I'm trying to find that gear. Click in. Yeah, I'm trying to click in. Yeah.
So we could get into the questions. There was something I was going to say, Mama. No, it just reminds me always in class, we always used to say also, if it's happening in the microcosm, it's happening in the macrocosm. So that made me think of that a lot, that all creation stories kind of correlate.
Exactly.
So whether we talk about a universal egg giving birth to its, children, if you like, or its planets, the same way a mother does. So there's always a correlation throughout nature.
As above, so below. And that's just how it is. So creation on all those different levels, whether it's a creation of a universe, a creation of a sun, a creation of a planet, a creation of an organic, what we would term as an organic life form, such as ourselves, there's a correlation. There's correspondence.
Yes. Yeah, exactly that, the law of correspondence, which we have to get into at some point. But should we get into these questions?
Of course, yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Let's get into them. So we asked people to send us questions in surrounding creation. Just anything that came to mind. So thank you all for sending those in. Okay, this is a good one to start with. Can creation exist without a creator?
I mean, it's a good question. I would say no, it cannot. But I wouldn't think of a creator in the sense that you might think of it in the modern world. Don't associate it at all with religion. Okay, don't associate it with some mystical man in the sky who clicked his fingers one day and created everything. But yes, there is a creator. We have a saying in our culture: all is, all expanding, all is. Okay, there is a creator.
Put
kawun. There you go. All is. There is a creator, and that creator is what I spoke about. It is that those 9 etherical gases and chemicals, conscious gases and chemicals, that are responsible for creating that which we see. Now, one important thing to note, as Africans or people of African descent, we are a physical manifestation of those 9 etherical gases, which is why the same way that everything came out of those 9 etherical gases is the same way that all other races came out of us. We are that black dot. We are that point of singularity on the planet. The point of singularity within the universe, or as the universe is formed, is that black dot of existence. So what happens is that through the course of different cultures, things become blurred or dumbed down, so to speak, or lose their potency. But generally, all cultures, all religions point to that creator. What that creator originally is that those conscious gases, which effectively are our ancestors. They are that which birthed us. And I think it's important to remember these are conscious gases, because we have the habit as humanoids, certainly in recent times, in presuming that if it isn't conscious in the way that we view consciousness, then it can't possibly be intelligent. So we don't view the gases or the chemicals that made up the universe as intelligent. We don't view atoms as intelligent. We don't even view cells as intelligent, even though we are made up of these things. They created us. They formed us. So there is an intelligence, and that intelligence is nature, so to speak.
Even Baba would break down the word intelligence.
Yeah.
Intel in the genes.
Intel in the genes. So there you go. And we would say our ancestors, we would call them the overseers. We call them Pa Netaru, Netar, that which became Neter or Neteru is a term people will be familiar with. That which became nature. Okay? And so through different cultures, again, everyone's got their own take on it. But through different cultures, that got morphed and changed, and eventually it was like, oh no, this. We need to think of things in a concept that relates to us as humanoid beings, and so we place that personality on it, that God, that so and that
Exactly.
being, that man, so to speak.
We
that was responsible.
humanize it in a sense.
We humanize it,
and it was always an interesting one, because we used to, when we was working in the bookstore, people would come in and say whether they stemmed from religion. They say, well, it couldn't have all been spontaneous. There has to be an intelligence to it. It's all too perfect. And because they will come very much from the point of view of we're basing stuff on Western science, whereas Western science may say it was kind of spontaneous Big Bang. Go. But what Baba does is he adds levels to it of, yes, in a sense it was a Big Bang, but doesn't mean there wasn't an intelligence to it.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, why can't nature be that intelligence? Why can't existence be that intelligence?
Exactly. All is put Kawun. And so that intelligence is responsible for creating this level of existence, as it would have to be. You know, one book I would point people towards, but I'd be ready once you go to read it, is Tehuti's Vision. There's a book called Tehuti's Vision, or Tehuti's Vision. And in that book, Tehuti is given a vision by Asar of creation. When you read it the first time, you're going to scratch your head.
Yeah, I still don't get it.
Yeah. Read it a couple times. Read it a few times. Okay. But it speaks of that intelligence deciding to slow down its vibration to come down to this form of existence. I'm shortening it, but looking at what it sees and saying, yeah, I kind of like this, almost falling in love with its shadow, and hence we exist in this form. But this isn't the original state of existence. We will be here. We will have our school. We will come back as many times as we need to for our soul to learn. And then we will go back, if you're lucky, to that original state of existence. And so that is where it is. But nature is that intelligence, Natalu, that intelligence, those 9 etherical gases, that higher etherical state, or those higher etherical beings are responsible for the creation of that which we see around us in this form. If that makes sense. What's deep is we might get there and realize that we are those beings, but it's a whole different, it's a whole deeper. Yeah, next time.
The person who sent you here is you.
Yeah, it's deep. You be looking up and be like, oh, why are you doing this to me? Looking out like it's some other god, so on and so forth. You might get across to the other side of existence and meet the person responsible for putting you through all this, and that person will be you, and then you can't really say much.
Deeper
things.
So I think, to summarize, creation does have a creator, but it's not necessarily how we think of it.
Yeah.
In this day and time.
In this day and time. Yeah. I wouldn't think of it that
Deeper
way.
levels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, second question. Okay, it's kind of got covered a bit, but is creation a spontaneous process or a deliberate act?
Yeah, I mean, leading on from what we just said, it's a deliberate act, okay? And it's a deliberate act. That which came before us, there's an intelligence to it. That which exists in a faster vibration to the state we exist in now, there's an intelligence to it. There was a decision, there was a thought, okay? And then after the thought came the sound, and here we are. So yeah, it's
sound became flesh.
Yeah, and that sound became flesh, right? And so yes, it was a decision. Again, don't think of it in a religious sense. I would just think of it in a spiritual sense, spiritual science sense. But yes, there was some deliberacy to what's taken place here, and thus we are here. So yeah, I would say yes. As leading on directly from what we just explained, I would say yes. There was some deliberate action.
How does scientific understanding of the universe influence our perception of creation?
That's a good
That's
question.
kind of getting into what do we think of when we say science as well, which you did mention earlier.
Yeah. I think what happens with, I think us as Sabaeans or student teachers of Baba Yaanuwn, at least we try to make sure that when we're talking about science, regardless of where we've been brought up, where we've grown up, what we've been surrounded by, when we think of science, we are training our minds to associate that word, if you like, with us and with our ancestors, and not with that which we see Western scientists do. That's not to discredit all Western scientists, like they're not doing things at all. But what it is to remind ourselves that we are the original scientists of the planet, if that makes sense. So what happens is that because culture, original African culture, became other cultures, which eventually became religion, with the most prominent religions that you see in the Western world today being the three that we know of. Because we've seen that transition, there is now a very clear and distinct division between that which is religion and that which is science. And there's no bridge really to join them, because what is religious, or the stories that they tell in religion, sound so far-fetched that you can't associate them with what you learn in reality about the universe, if that makes sense. So there's a big gap there, and it's like, well, you're either for science or you believe in religion. And that's created a division. What our culture does is marry the two concepts together, if you like. Now, religion is birthed off really spiritual science becoming morphed, what's the word? Dumbed down isn't the word I'm looking for.
It's kind of lost its foundation.
Yeah, lost its foundation. So religion has been birthed out of higher sciences losing their foundation, losing their explanations, losing the knowledge which allowed you to understand those higher sciences, and just saying things. Yeah, God, click, pow. In the beginning was God, word, flesh, so on and so forth. No, and it's just, it becomes what scientists will perceive certainly as ridiculous stories.
Because it's lost its because.
Yes.
Or its explanation. It's
exactly.
Just, I believe.
So
that's that. Whereas where you're more bridging to science, it's to look for explanation or the why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's why in our culture, and one thing we're always saying on this podcast is that if you want to get into the higher sciences, if you want to learn what is beyond the atom and then beyond the three main subatomic particles that people will know, that being protons, neutrons, and electrons, and you want to start getting into quarks, and you want to start getting into biaps, and you want to start getting into Z's, so on and so forth, you have to make sure you have your foundational science, okay? But we don't stop there. We don't learn what an atom is, and just because the Greeks named it atom from atomos, which means indivisible, we stop there. Like, yeah, okay, we know it all. Baba Yaanuwn takes us beyond that, okay? But he doesn't ignore the existence of that which is science, or which would be labeled science in this modern world. And so our culture merges those concepts. Yes, we're going to learn about science. You're going to learn about the foundation that you need to know, but we're going to go beyond that and learn about spiritual science. What's going on with these particles that don't have any physical weight? What are they? If they have no physical weight, what are they? We know they exist, but what are they? If that makes sense. And so you marry the two. Religion often, especially throughout the throughout, most of the time that religion's been perpetrated, so to speak, is not marrying the two. It's just telling far-fetched stories. And so when you learn science, it's a complete separation now. Okay, so I have to dismiss that. And you lose that ability, in a sense, to have that spirituality, because there's been a division created that should never have been created. No, you can still have spirituality and you can still have logic and science. The two can be one, if that makes sense. So when you're dealing with how science affects our perception, I think a lot of people, they will start to learn the science and then through what's been done, de-associate themselves with anything, sometimes with anything spiritual, because they associate spirituality and religion as the same thing. No, it's different.
Wasn't I just saying earlier, we have to make the distinction of that? So I wanted to do a whole segment about that, because some people are mixing that up. If people say they're spiritual, they think it means to be religious, not necessarily the same thing. Yeah, not necessarily the same thing. Often not the same thing at all, because that which is often considered religious is just... I'm not trying to disrespect any religious people today. I'm not trying to do that, but it's just nonsensical. Yeah. If your spirituality, there's practices and there's foundation to it. And that is really your culture, comes by way of your culture, your practices, how you connect with that which is beyond the physical. It's really seeking to know that about that beyond the physical matter, which we know, we can confirm the spiritual realm exists. Yes. So there's no spookism to it. There's no spookism. And so you can go down the scientific path if you want, learn about metaphysics, learn about quantum physics, learn about particles which don't obey any physical laws. So if they don't obey any physical laws, what laws do they obey? It means they're not governed by physics. They're not governed by the physical world. They must be governed by something else. So you can learn about these concepts that go beyond the physical. You can do the science and you can do the culture, and you can learn about the practices of your ancestors, how they connected with the higher power, what was behind it, how did it work for them, so on and so forth. And that can be one thing intertwined. You don't want to, with a lot of these religions, they completely disregard that which made us powerful in the past, and they just rely on this faith and this belief and this apparent God, so on and so forth. And it's very recent. These concepts, these religious concepts are very recent as it pertains to how long we've been on the planet. We've been on the planet a lot longer than these religions. So we knew how to connect with that which was beyond the physical, surely. So we shouldn't be relying upon them. We shouldn't be looking at them. And so your perception of science shouldn't change that which is divine, so to speak. Shouldn't change your perception of that which is divine, because the two can coexist in the same place. You can talk about the divinity of nature and the divinity of what we see around us and that which came before us, or what state we were in before we got into this state. You can talk about that and still have a scientific foundation. In fact, it is necessary to have a scientific foundation to truly understand what it is that we are as beings, so on and so forth. So in terms of how it affects it, I think that's how it affects it. Sometimes people associate science with as completely opposite to spirituality. Don't do that. The two belong together, okay? And in our culture, we try our best to teach you. And Baba Yaanuwn has done an amazing job of taking us through science and through what you might call your standard science that you can learn by studying, even in this part of the world, your science, your schools or whatever, and beyond to that which we used to know. He's not telling us anything that we haven't known as a people. He is reminding us or helping us to remember that which is in our genes anyway. Intelligence, right? Intel in your genes. It's in your genes. He is reactivating it. He is re-adding it. So when you read the books, you break down that word, read, re-add. He's just re-adding it. Okay? It's there already. Okay? And so that's what he's doing. He's merging the two. So it shouldn't alienate you from being spiritual just because you study science and you learn how things work. No, the two are the same. Absolutely.
And they should be matched.
Absolutely. Okay, where are we at? Okay. Yeah, here we are. Does creation inherently imply purpose or meaning?
That's a good one. Yeah, it's a good one. I suppose it's how far back you go when you're talking about that term creation, because remember, creation is growth and existence has always been, so to speak. But yeah, I think it means purpose. I think there's meaning to it. There's a reason that we are here. If you're talking about physical creation, there is a reason that we are here. Sometimes we struggle with that. Every individual struggles with that. Anyone who says they're just living down here completely confident of why they're here, what they're supposed to do, what they're going through, and they're okay with it. Nah. We've all had our moments. And primarily physical existence is a school for your soul, isn't it? We're soul beings. We're not physical beings. We're soul beings in a physical experience. And I remind myself of that often, because if you don't, you get pretty down sometimes. Like, damn, is this it? Is this it? No, so we're soul beings, and we have a spiritual aspect to us. And currently we have a physical aspect to us. That physical aspect is quite short relative to our soul, okay? Relative to existence, which is eternal. Your physical life, especially in this state, is not eternal, is it? We're going to pass on from this form at some point. So, yeah, I think it does mean purpose. I think it does mean meaning. This was done intentionally. And I think each part of existence, which manifests as each being, so me, you, Ray over there, hiding and waiting for his next opportunity to promote 9 Sticks. We have our individual reasons for being here, being on the planet, whether it's to do with us learning as a soul, whether it's to do with us contributing to the planet, to our people, whatever our purpose is, there is purpose to us being here. And we are part of that. And nature just continues upon those cycles. We all play our role, if that makes sense. So yeah, the mere fact that we exist in this state, certainly there's a purpose to it. Certainly there's a reason for it. And when you pass or when you transition, you might learn about a few more of those reasons as to why you came here in the first place.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That's always an interesting one, I guess, that speaks to the existential crisis people sometimes have, like the what and whys. Why is existence? Why are we?
Yeah. Read Tahuti's vision. I don't know if it will help though. It might make that crisis a little bit worse. But read the Tahuti's vision, because one thing that, in that book, there's some questions asked really. And it's like, well, if us as mortals, we exist really in this state, it's through no fault of our own. Because it was the higher vibration that decided to lower the vibration, if that makes sense. So one could argue that we're in this state and it's like, and we're going through and we're suffering. It's like, yeah, but what do we do about it? We didn't do anything. And in Tahuti's vision, it speaks about that whole process of that vibration lowering itself down to this form, saw what it saw, did fall in love with it. But then there was also a point where that higher vibration was like, nah, I ain't about this, and left, so to speak. And then we were stuck down here, just here. And it's like, well, you did this. And they're just gone. Like, nah, it's too much down there. It's too crazy. So physical existence really is chaos in that sense. Peace is really that which is beyond the physical. Physical existence by nature, so to speak, is chaos, because it speaks about that darkness being the calm, that darkness which was before physical existence, really being the calm and the peace. And light is chaos. So the moment that sun was born, even though we acknowledge the sun is divine in the fact that it's responsible for all else, the moment that sun was born and that light was born, so to speak, is when chaos began. And then you really originally would have had only soul beings in physical existence, but eventually the soul, so to speak, or that symbolic soul would leave, and beings without soul would start to manifest. And so it really is chaotic in terms of what you can get manifesting on this realm of existence. But here we are. So what can we do, if that makes sense? Read the book.
Yeah, I guess.
Read the book.
When we say Pawot Kawono all is, it really all kind of puts it in perspective for me. Because literally the purpose of existence is to exist. That's how I kind of interpret it.
Yeah, there you go.
But I guess if we take it to a universe point of view, are we saying everything... let's put it down to the solar system to simplify it. Are we saying everything that exists in the solar system has purpose? Yeah,
everything has purpose. There is a reason that everything exists, even if we don't understand or care about the reason. The reason is there, the purpose is there. And different forms. But, it's not to say that we should pay attention to everything, try and work out what's going on everywhere. But it's just to say that the way that it's been formed, the precision of it, if you take the solar system, for example, the precision of the solar system is not an accident. Okay, and so there is reason to it. There is purpose to it. if that makes sense. And I like the line. I like existence purpose is to exist, so to speak. But throughout this topic is when you have your most of your crisis, so to speak. Because eventually you get to a point like, why? Yeah, listen. That's a conversation between you and your higher self. I'm gonna leave it with y'all.
That's true.
I'm gonna leave it with y'all.
That's true. Okay, see where we're at. We got some time. Okay, this is a good one. I feel like elements of all these questions we've just covered anyway, but we can tie them together. But this one is, can creation be understood purely through rational thought, or does it require a sense of spirituality?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know that rational thought and spirituality are two separate entities.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes sense. You can still have rational thought and you can still have spirituality alongside it. But I understand why it's been separated in this day and time, especially with some of the nonsense that you see that's put forward as spirituality. And a lot of that, like I say, it stems from religion. Okay, but spirituality was never that. And it isn't that. Its foundation isn't religion. Religion is new. Spirituality has existed since before the physical even existed, because it's spiritual, if that makes sense. So rational thought and spirituality can be fused, okay? And you can apply rational thought to that which is spiritual. Of course, we have states of mind which maybe go beyond a process sometimes. We spoke about the 4 higher senses not too long ago, and we spoke about intuition, and sometimes you just knowing something and feeling it in your bones and your blood, like, I know this.
Get to, which is really true. Because I always like that line in Men in Black 2, Rosario Dawson's character. She says something to the effect of, when we're young, we always know there's something more out there in terms of aliens, and then we're told otherwise.
There you go.
So I think when you're young, you just have that stuff you innately know. And even as you're growing, you just have these feelings. But then you can seek to get confirmation and have your foundation. But then it just kind of confirms stuff you know within your being.
There you go.
Because we are spiritual beings. We are spirits housed within a physical body. So stuff from the spiritual realm, we're still going to carry with us. We're just going to know things. But I still think, especially in this day and time, it's important to have your foundation and your confirmation. Yeah. But I still think that applies of where you just innately know something.
Yeah, and it definitely applies. And remember, one of the reasons that it's so important, as you mentioned, in this modern world to have the foundation is because there's so much misinformation. So when we were first manifested on the planet, we wouldn't have had all this misinformation. We would have just had our culture. We would have beings coming forth that just knew things, or were just connected to Panathalu, or connected in some way and had those natural abilities. And just because you have natural abilities, just because you have that which seems divine, that doesn't mean the absence of science, even though you may not understand it. It doesn't mean, okay, now, so that's not scientific. That's just, so there is meaning to it, even if you don't understand it. But what's happening in this day and time is that there's so many things flying around out there, so many different, whether it's religions, culture, so many different trains of thought, so many different schools of thought, that it can benefit you hugely to have that foundation of understanding what is real, what is reality, what is science, what is this all built upon, so that you can try and then decipher what is nonsense and what is real. But if you are one of those beings that have that natural ability to know things, or to feel things, or have those natural elements of those extra senses, you got abilities. Don't deny that based on the fact that no one's been able to explain it to you thus far. We dealt with so many people. That's what the beautiful thing about what Baba Yaanuwn's created here. We dealt with so many people in class over the years, and met all student teachers will attest to this, and none would have done more in this realm, of course, than Baba Yaanuwn himself. All student teachers would attest to this. You meet people who, when you meet them, they're looking for those answers. They're looking for those answers that can't be answered, certainly, of course, by religion, but can't be answered by Western science or science class. They need something more. But they know things. They feel things. Things are happening to them, and they need explanations on these experiences. And that's the beautiful thing about the Warner, Baba Yaanuwn being present in this day and time, is that you can get those answers. that you might not get in previous times. But not only might you not get them, is that there's so much misinformation, so many things being told to you that just isn't real, it isn't true. And so
yeah, which I think is an important distinction to make, because sometimes we will be having conversations with religious folk. I remember a particular conversation with Jehovah's Witnesses where they were saying, well, science can change or can be wrong. Like this many years ago, we thought we knew something. We thought the earth was this way. Turns out it wasn't. And it's important to make the distinction of science. Well, better yet, the facts can't change.
they can't change.
It's just people's understanding of the facts.
Yeah, there you go.
Which then evolves.
Yeah.
But
it's also people's arrogance, because
Yeah.
sometimes as a people you just have to admit you don't know something rather than putting your labels on it. And that's what happens in science often. Before they fully understand or understand something, they label it and say, yeah, it's like this. It's just say, we don't know yet. We're going to work on it though.
Yeah, and it's also what's established in Western science is also put across as a global thing, because they were saying we thought this, and I'm like, who's we?
Yeah.
First of all,
Who's we?
Speaking French?
You speaking French? What is this, Nintendo? What do you mean we?
Who's we?
Who's we?
We didn't think the earth was flat.
Exactly.
We
And so these are
definitely didn't.
Yeah, exactly. These are particular groups of people who thought this way. And it isn't to say that just because those people now have gone around, colonized, conquered, and dominated and said, yeah, we all thought it was this. And you've got Asian cultures all around the planet, not just us, who are looking at them like, no, we never thought it was that. We never thought it was that. How could we possibly think it was that? So again, it's a great example. Greeks think that the earth is flat. Greeks think we're the center of the universe. But when you go to Asian African cultures, we were making structures, i.e. the pyramids, that lined up with celestial bodies thousands, hundreds of thousands of light years away. So we must have had an understand. How you do that? How you do that if you don't understand celestial bodies, placement, science, so on and so forth? How do you do that? Okay? And so Asian cultures all around the world are looking at Western cultures and they're saying, yeah, we thought it was this, but now it's that. And we're like, no, we never thought it was that. We never thought it was that. Go back to our ancient, whether it's our ancient temples, look at the walls of the pyramids. The Unas pyramid speaks about creation. Baba Yaanuwn spoke about that in Parkatut, the Stargate. Okay, how it's all there. Go to these ancient walls and you'll see that ancient cultures had a great understanding and understanding of the universe. Okay, so Westerners are very new in relation to the planet. So just because they're like, yeah, there's no. That's modern. Okay, leave their stories behind, trace back your roots, and you'll find that your ancestors knew a lot more than these Westerners will give them credit for. Okay, this is reality, and it's not just our culture that can speak to this. This is real. So yeah, no, you gotta go back beyond that.
Facts.
Yeah, go back beyond that. The Earth is flat. We're at the center of the universe. No. So yeah. Yeah.
Who's we?
Who is we?
Okay, yeah, I think we covered that. You can have both rational thought and spirituality.
Yes, you can have both. And they're not to be separated, if that makes sense.
Okay, next question. Good one is... These have been good questions so far, I gotta say.
Great questions. Some great questions. I'm liking it.
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Okay, next question is... Is creation a continuous process, or does it have distinct beginnings and endings?
Yeah, I mean, creation, if you're talking about creation of existence, no beginnings, no endings. At the end of our actual facts, without beginning and without end. And that's the acknowledgement that it's that which exists has always existed in some form and will always exist in some form. Within that bubble, so to speak, or within that existence, you have different creations taking place. You have the creation of this physical universe. You have the creation of this planet. You have the creation as us as a people. You have the creation as other races. You have the creation of the animals. You have the creation of one individual person. Okay, so you could put timestamps, if you like, on these individual creations as it pertains to this cycle, if that makes sense. But existence itself is without beginning and without end. It's always existed. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So it's always existed in some form. If that
So
makes
is it
sense.
best to define creation as a process within existence?
Yeah, creation really is a process within existence, and it's that process of growth or transformation, and it's always happening.
Yeah, it's always happening. So in that sense, no.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of always happening, but you do have your distinct kind of...
Yeah. Moments in in that creation. But that is important to note that a lot of that would be from the perception that we have now as human beings, where we can see and say, okay, that was created then, that was created then. It's arguable as whether, because remember, when we talk about time is what we are within now. Okay? You will not always be within time. Remember, time is still as space is still. Okay? And this room, so to speak, for an example, is still, we can walk through it, we can move around through this space. That's the same way that you move through time, you age through time, that it is what you might call one directional, because that's because of our state of existence. But time isn't to be perceived that way, so to speak. The past, the present, and the future are all happening now. It's just which point you're in that spiral of existence, if that makes sense. So when we say without beginning, without end, you're talking about all existence. Time itself is something you will step out of one day. So when we speak about our understanding of creation or moments in creation, that was created then, even though we can acknowledge existence is without beginning or end, we'll look at things from the cycle that we're in. Okay, when was Earth created? When was this universe born? When was our sun born? When were we first created? So on and so forth. And that's okay. But if you're beyond that state of existence, if you're a Etherian, so to speak, or a non-etherical being in your highest state, a whole light being, so to speak, you would have seen this so many times, and I'm putting that in quote, that it all becomes one, so to speak. And if you exist outside of that time, who's to say when, what? It's not the same perception.
Yeah, you've graduated out of who, what, when.
Exactly, you've graduated beyond that. And so you see that all of these creations are the same thing, if that makes sense. So that's why we have that correspondence on our level. And we speak about the creation of the planet or the creation of the universe being similar to the creation of us as a physical being. And the process of that sperm hitting the egg is the same thing as those negative etherical particles hitting the positive ones. It's the same thing as a meteorite carrying amino acids like the Ben stone or the Kaaba that the Muslims have at this moment, hitting the planet, and that bringing those ingredients for life. It's the same concept. It's the same thing. This big bang or this clash of two entities that will grow a third one. Okay, so there was a lot of symbology in our ancient teachings about this. Whether you go back to books like the Cycles, where you speak about that dot becoming the line, becoming a wall, becoming a square, and that square being divided into 180 degrees of agreeable, 180 degrees of disagreeable, and that being a symbolic explanation of the creation of our universe, if that makes sense. So we can certainly look at it in that form. But if you're outside of time, you become to see that all of this is, you're looking into a room. We always say Interstellar is a good example of that. You can look into a room. If you're on a certain level, you can look into a room and see all points of time at once. What happened at this point in time? What happened at that point of time? So to speak, if that makes sense. But you will not be in this state forever. And one day you'll step out of time. So, yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, there's levels to it.
There's levels to it.
There's levels to it. So as long as we're bound by time, we can say there are beginning and endings to creation.
Or to creations within existence.
Yeah,
we can put timestamps on things as we exist in time, if that makes sense. But we won't exist in time forever. And that is not where we originally came from. This is a state that we are in. And time, space, and matter are the triad of the current state of existence that we're in. But eventually you will not be matter. You will be energy. Eventually you will not be in time. You will be outside of time, so to speak. So I hope that helps,
that makes
if
sense.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
But existence is without beginning and without end. All is, always has been, always will be, in some form. So, yeah.
Okay, we got the last two questions.
We're getting through this.
We're getting through this. Bam.
It's easy.
Okay.
It's not easy.
We're tired as well. It's late.
It's late.
We're going through it
I ain't had
for
my
you
dinner.
all.
Yeah. We're getting it shot.
Yeah, we're not even eating till we get this shot.
Yeah, I might collapse as soon as this episode starts. So yeah, let's make it happen.
It's good to know I'm not the only hungry person.
Yeah. Don't worry, Ray. I feel your pain, man. I feel your pain.
Don't worry, I'm good.
We got a shout out Ray for sticking through the hunger and joining us today.
Yeah, Ray. It's like, I'm going to stick with my family. Forget the food. What was it to promote 9-6? That's the only question.
That's the question.
Come on, guys. I'm never going to hear the end of this, am I?
No, probably not.
Okay, this is a good one. Okay, so the next question is, are creation and evolution two completely separate concepts, or do they intersect?
Yeah, I mean, as people might guess from what we've discussed already, no, it's not. They're not separate. They're not separate things. They're part of the same process. They're one and the same. This is something that Baba Yaanuwn addressed directly at the beginning of most of our actual facts, because it's that whole creation versus evolution, which has become an argument again because of modern states of mind, if that makes sense, where when you think of creation, you associate with that
something
power.
Instantaneous.
Yeah, something that just happened one day. And when you think evolution, you might associate it with whatever their theories of evolution are, Darwin or whoever. And really that creation process, as we've said, is growth. Evolution is what? Transformation over time from one state into another. And that's exactly what growth is. Okay, so you can take macrocosms and microcosms of this, but this process is part and parcel of creation, so to speak. And creation is something, if you want to use that word, evolving from one state into another over time. And so, yeah, these are part and parcels of that same thing. We shouldn't take the words and associate it with what has been pushed forward at the front of those words, if that makes sense. So creation happens over a period of time. If we even look at us as beings, when we're in the womb, we evolve, so to speak. We go through different states of existence before we even come out. When we first form, we're very different to when we come out of the womb, are we not? And so it's really that growth over time, that growth over a period of time. Evolution certainly exists, but don't associate. It's not exactly correct what they've said about evolution, but it certainly exists to some degree, because we as beings, there's a good book actually called Intelligent Design, Divine Design, or Plot of Aliens, right? And it speaks about epigenetics. It speaks about genes that turn off and on, dependent on your environment, depending on your surroundings, so on and so forth. And we're constantly changing and morphing dependent on that which is around us. Okay, so that creation, even if when you have a creator, it doesn't mean someone snapped and you appeared as you are now. We were seeded and we grew into what we are now through different forms. First, we were in the waters. We came out of the waters onto land, and we became what we are now through different processes. And so that evolution or that change or that growth or that transformation, whatever word you want to apply to it, is happening all the time. Okay, so we as individuals will go through our individual evolution or our individual growth, and you will look different at 5 than you do at 10, than you do at 15, than you do at 20, so on and so forth. And we as a race or a species will go through our changes, which are obviously longer term, because you're talking about the entire race or the entire species. We'll go through our changes over a course of time, where we'll have different things. At first we were in the waters. At first we didn't have hair. At first we weren't as tall as we are now. We've gone through our different changes based on environment, based on who we've mixed our genes with, based on extraterrestrials interceptions, based on various things in order to come to the point at which we are now. So they're not separate, and they shouldn't be seen as so. But when I say creation and I say evolution, I don't want you to take necessarily what you might have been told applies to those words. No, I'm talking about that existence, that growth that happens anyway. And of course, through that, we evolve, if that makes sense. So yeah, they're not separate, is what I would say to that question.
Yep. Okay, so let's get to the final one. Yeah, we're well over an hour today. This is a bulky episode.
It doesn't even feel like it. It doesn't even feel like it, but yeah. But we're there. We made it to the last question.
Content.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, so this is a good one to end on. Different cultures and religions have different stories and interpretations of creation. Is only one correct?
That's a good question. No, it's not that only one is correct. It's not that at all. There will be, at the very least, elements of truth in most of the creation stories. Even if they're being misinterpreted and delivered incorrectly, there will be elements, at least elements of truth in most interpretations of the creation reality or the creation story. To have different cultures have their different ways of telling the story is natural, is normal. What I would say is not to say that only one is true, but you do have one that was first, so to speak. And so will be closest to that which is divine, so to speak. And the one that was first comes from the first beings on the planet, or the first culture that existed on the planet, which is African in nature. So when you're dealing with Africans, when you deal with our ancient science, I've broken down our science as given in existence how and why. We would have also had our deities that represented these different elements of nature. For example, we as Asian Africans or Asian Egyptians have Atum, and the symbolic picture that many may have seen of Atum's ejaculation. And that is symbolic of the creation of the universe. Okay. When you go to Hindu culture, for example, they might have Brahma. Okay. Brahma is, I think he splits a flower into 3 parts symbolically, and you have the heavens, the sky, and the earth, so to speak. And so they have their deity and deities, because it's not just Brahma who are responsible for creation. We'll have Atum, we'll have Ptah, who's considered the opener of the cosmos. We'll have Atum, his ejaculation, symbolic of the creation. And the symbology is important here in our culture, because that Atum's ejaculation was symbolic of the precision of nature and the precision of the creation of our universe. And it was symbolic also of the fact that everything we see in this universe came from that one seed. Okay, so the ingredients for everything we see always existed, just in a different form, and it grew into what we see now. Okay, the same way that as an egg or as a sperm, all the ingredients for what you are on this very day existed, and you grew into what you are on this very day, if that makes sense. So we'll have our culture, and we'll have our deities, our representations of those different aspects of nature, whether you're talking about Atum, whether you're talking about Ptah, whether you're talking about Nut or Gebab, so on and so forth. These different deities that represent different aspects of nature or of existence or of creation. Read Pargatut. Baba Yaanuwn breaks it down clearly in Pargatut, the Stargate. Great actual fact. Okay, but then the Hindus will have their way. The Buddhists will have their way. When you study it, you're going to see that there's similar aspects. Correlation towards. And that is because all cultures came out of African culture. And all these people learned from Africans or sprouted off at some point from Africans. And at that point, they would have had their own extraterrestrial interceptions, their own extraterrestrial overseers who are responsible for a lot of the aspects of their culture, if that makes sense. So that's the same with us as Africans. We have our extraterrestrial overseers, Panadaru. The Hindus will have their extraterrestrial overseers. Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, everyone will have their extraterrestrial overseers, whether they interpret them as such or not. When you're talking about gods or angels or that which exists outside of this planet, you're talking about extraterrestrials or extra, terra, astral, okay? Something that is extra to that which is on Earth, terra, and is from the stars, astral, okay? So extra, if you exist and you're outside the planet, automatically you're an extraterrestrial, aren't you? So whatever term you're using to present that, that is what it is, if that makes sense. But we cannot deny that we as Africans are the first on the planet. So we therefore cannot deny that our story, our interpretation of reality or the deliverance of that science is the most original. And if you really go back and understand African science, ancient African science, then you read a little bit about Hinduism, then you read a little bit about Buddhism, then you come to the modern day religions, you're going to see along the way, there's similarities, there's correlation, there's correspondence. And it's a story that changed and morphed depending on who was telling it, right? So Hindus will have their deities that they use to tell the story. It's not wrong. It's not wrong for a people to want to put themselves into the realities of creation, okay? But the ultimate reality of creation, especially when you talk about, let's deal with this planet, is that we were first. That's just the reality. Those of African descent were first, and so all else came out of it. But it doesn't mean that you as a Hindu or you even as a European can't put yourself somewhere in order to look at that and say, yeah, okay, I'm something in this. But the truth is the truth, okay? And all races, all groups of people know they came from us. This is a reality. And so, but have your culture. Have your culture, have your way of telling the story.
It's nothing wrong to put your deities or representations towards the story. I guess where it's wrong is when you try and impose that on others.
Exactly.
Also.
When you try and impose that on others, and when you try to pretend, especially if you're the most recent creation on the planet, that you are the most ancient creation on the planet. Try to pretend it all started with you. There's every single other group of people existed before this last creation period, which would be the Caucasians. Every other group of people. But if you try to install yourself as, no, this is where it all began, right here. And our God is the creator of all. That's where it's just so obviously incorrect.
You have to acknowledge that which was first, and that goes to all races.
That goes to all races. You have to acknowledge, and all races will have to acknowledge that fact before the end of this cycle, that all that exists on this planet came out of the Africans, the same way that all that exists in this universe came out of the black dot, correlation, correspondence, and that just is what it is. So in answer to the question, no, it's not that only one can be correct, because if you go through the stories, you'll see that creation story or creation reality is told in different ways. So we have the science that I broke down earlier on, and we also have our deity representations where we'll say the symbology behind it, where we say Atum's ejaculation, we'll say Ptah the opener. If you read Pargatut, it speaks about Ptah the opener speaking that word which birthed the cosmos, those three tones in one. Read it all, and then you come all the way to modern day, and you'll see terms like, and the word was with God and the word became flesh, which you can see if you trace it back. Oh, that's similar to our ancient stories. If you can really trace it back, it's just been changed, morphed slightly, and made to suit them, if that makes sense. So it's not that only one can be correct. I think every group of people should live their culture, have their stories, have their way in which they perceive and view things. But we have to acknowledge the reality in that which is real. We are the most ancient creation on the planet, and our stories are from which all else was birthed. Our culture is from which all else was birthed, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. Even now to say, no, but now we have our culture, our vibration. Absolutely fine. But everything came out of us as everyone came out of us. And that is just reality, if that makes sense. So yeah, read Pargatut, read Tahuti's vision, read Existence, How and Why. We'll deal with the science of it, but those in our culture would have heard the stories of the Ogdoads, the stories of the Enneads, and how we represented these aspects of nature and explained the story using these symbolic deities, if that makes sense.
Exactly that.
And we trace it back. So we have the symbolic side and we have the actual side, but we might actually talk about a being that had the title Atum. We might talk about a being that had the title Gebab. And then we're also going to talk about these deities in relation to nature and how they played their roles in the creation of nature. So it can never be denied that which is us, or that which we are a physical manifestation of, is responsible for the universe. Nine Ether is responsible for the universe. We are a physical manifestation of Nine Ether, which is why we're responsible for what we see on the planet today. Everyone else, in a sense, is our children or grandchildren. Try and create a bit of distance.
Yeah, I do.
You don't want to associate with some of the things some people have done. So I'll be like, yeah, they're kind of
They're
like
adopted.
Adopted. Great grandkids, came a bit wild, But yeah, so I hope that kind of answers the question. No, all cultures are generally going to have aspects of truth to how they tell the story, and they're going to have their own symbology behind it, if that makes sense. But we have to acknowledge where everything came from. We have to acknowledge the truth of that. We were first, and so the way that we have delivered it taught all others at some point. And so when you read them, you're going to see similarities. I think the Buddhists might literally speak about how existence is without beginning or end in some form. It might not be exactly those words, but they speak about, there is no beginning or end. It just is, so to speak, if you look into Buddhism. And so you can then begin to see how everything really did come out of what we are relearning today as Asian Africans, or as Africans, but what the Asian Africans knew, if that makes sense. So yeah, I hope that helps. You read the different cultures, read you don't have to dive into the cultures, but if you read certain accounts, if you read the creation story as it pertains to us, as it pertains to the Hindus, which is actually down as the first religion, if I'm correct. Remember, we had our culture. Hinduism is down as the first religion. But interestingly enough, sometimes I've spoken to Hindus before who will speak about, who won't consider, who will say, no, Hinduism is not a religion, it's a culture. So I've spoken to Hindus before who have said that. And so it is what it is, but it came out of us. Hinduism, read a bit about Buddhism, then relate it to what you know if you live in the Western world about the modern day religions, and you'll see, okay, there's a correlation. And you might be able to work out for yourself where the misinterpretations and the incorrect delivery of the information came. Because a lot of what you read is symbolic, even in biblical. Remember, the Bible was just an amalgamation of previous texts relating to the Sumerian culture, African culture, so on and so forth. And a lot of things are delivered by those who are Christians as though it's literal, okay? It's not to dismiss the book entirely. There are symbolic truths, so to speak, in the Bible, if you know what the symbology is or where it came out of. But to deliver it as literal facts is not going to hold up, is it, against what we learn now in the modern world? So it's time to leave that. But there is symbology there. So a lot of the stories are symbolic in nature. And when you understand the symbology, then you begin to understand the reason. You know, this story about two brothers always fighting, whether it's Cain and Abel, whether it's Osiris and Set, or as we say, Asar and Satuk, whether it's Mufasa and Simba, Mufasa and Scar. It doesn't matter who the brothers are.
I was going to say that.
Whether it's Enlil and Enki, it doesn't matter who the brothers are. That story is about duality. And how that duality is always going to happen in nature. And if you have two opposite ends of a line, naturally they clash because that they are each other's opposites. That's what the story is symbolic of, duality and opposites. But people will take the story and say, no, it's literal. Cain and Abel, and Cain did this and Abel did that, and it's facts. Where's Cain and Abel at? Where's anyone from the Bible at then? Where's the evidence that they ever existed? You know, other cultures have evidence that their ancestors existed. Where's the evidence of these people? And so you begin to understand now these stories came out of other stories or other symbology and were used to explain certain aspects of existence. Yeah. If that makes sense. I hope that provides something of an answer.
What does Erica from Stranger Things say? Just the facts.
Just the facts. Just the facts. Read Pargatut. Existence, How and Why, Pargatut, Tahuti's Vision. 3 books that I would point to for today.
So you're really going to make them read Tahuti's Vision?
Yeah, listen.
You're going to put them through that.
Listen, man. If my head was put in a spin, then everybody else got to suffer. The first time I read that book, I was just like, literally, what are you talking about?
Maybe we could all come together and figure out what Brother was saying.
We'll figure it out. We'll go into that book as well. Once we figure it out, we'll go into that book in more detail. Because what I've said today have been brief summaries and pieces. It wasn't told in that order. I remember
we did that one in class, though.
Yeah.
It was deep. Yeah. A lot of questions with that one. A lot
of questions. So yeah, I hope that helps. Nothing wrong with different people having their different cultures and their own stories to match the reality, but we must acknowledge the truth.
We simply must. Okay. That's all our questions.
I didn't know we were going to get through them all.
I didn't know either, but we got through them.
We did.
I think those were some really good questions.
They were. Got me thinking, your brain working. Yeah. I like that. If
anyone has any more, feel free to send them in for Amakhu.
The heat. It's hot. I'm sweating. It's a lot. It's a lot
of lights in here.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. Do my best. I'll do my best. But now existence is one that always interested me. Creation, it always interested me, and I knew it wasn't a story that we were told growing up in this part of the world about some dude in the sky that was like a pal. See, that's the thing. I want to go into the creation of us as humanoids in more detail, and I think we should do that because and explain the errors in thinking of this Adam and Eve. It's not again, these are terms that were taken we're not going to go off into another one, but when don't ignore the correlation between the words Atum, the words atom, and the word Adam. Don't ignore the correlation between those 3 words. And we'll go into exactly what we're talking about there, hopefully, in another episode. So I got to dive into it. Too many misconceptions about how humans came to be.
Too many. Too many. But I'd like to thank you all for listening. We're going to go eat some food now.
Yeah. That we are. That's what I'm thinking about now. I just started thinking about it.
I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. It's important to leave a comment on YouTube. It helps the channel build. Tells the algorithm, hey, I like these guys. Want them to stick around. Maybe they should do this some more. Because I look forward to it every week. So I'm going to leave a comment to let them know. And leave a comment of what I want them to cover next. Let's get engaged. Let's get it going. And yeah, I just wanted to add that because people be sending me like messages and stuff. And I'm like, it's great, but leave on the YouTube, please.
Yeah, help the channel.
help the channel. So yeah, subscribe to our YouTube. Check us out on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. We're on pretty much every podcast platform. So for anyone who's into audio listening, which I'm learning, some people prefer audio. Even someone was saying to me, yeah, I like to have it on as I'm doing stuff, so I can't always watch. So I'm into audio platforms.
I hear it. We try to make sure we're
everywhere.
Yeah, we're accommodating all people.
Exactly that. So you can catch us on all those Spotify, Apple, Google podcast platforms, etc. And yeah, we'll be back.
We will be back.
But until then, farewell. Wadu.
Farewell and wadu.